Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good evening. My name's Kelly Blair. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm really grateful to be here and be sober tonight. My sponsor, Jamie, was your original scheduled speaker, but she's sick and she couldn't make it. And she also thought the meeting was at 8 o'clock, which is why we slinked in here at 10 minutes to 8. So I'm going to apologize for being late. I want to tell you that I loved alcohol. I loved everything about alcohol. I had been trying to get sober since I was 16 years old. I'll be 31 years old next Thursday, and I'll be 6 years sober, God willing, at the end of November. And it took me a long time to get it. And when I was 16, I didn't think I was an alcoholic, but I thought I had a drug problem, so I went to a drug abuse program. And I went to my first AA meeting when I was 16, and I heard the speaker speak, and he talked, I'll never forget this, he talked about his mother was insane, and she chopped off the neighbor's hands and put it on his chest to drown him in the bathtub. And I thought, you know what, I'm not an alcoholic. That never happened to me. You know, I lived out in Calabasas, and I went to school with all the rich kids, and we were by no means rich, but my parents were always trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you know, they tried to give us the best of everything we had, and they were alcoholics, so I grew up in an alcoholic home, and whenever my mom was getting ready to go out, she would always tell us that she's getting drunk, and she always put on perfume and got all her makeup and looked really pretty. And so I thought that, you know, getting drunk was what grown-ups and pretty women did, and so that was what I started with. When I was young, we weren't brought up in any religion. My dad's family was Mormon, my mom's family was Christian, and we weren't made to go to any church, but our friends went to churches, so we went to church with them. And I always had a good idea I always thought God was a good idea, and I always tried to be a good kid, but I always had that feeling like I was different, always. And when I was 13, my friends asked me if I wanted to get high, and I just thought they were the worst people in the whole world. And then a year later, I was drinking and getting loaded. And I was in high school. The first time I came home drunk, the first time I took a drink, I was 13. I was still in junior high school. And I didn't get drunk. I hated the taste of it. What we did, it was a Halloween party. It was this time of year, it was Halloween. We took my friend's mother's liquor out of their cabinet and poured it into our Halloween punch, and it was Kool-Aid and about 5 different kinds of alcohol, and you can imagine how that tasted, and you can imagine why a 13-year-old wouldn't like that. But all my friends were acting crazy and fun, so I acted crazy and fun and told everybody I was drunk, even though I think I took 2 sips of it. But I wanted to fit in. I so desperately wanted to fit in. I have this red hair. I had red hair and freckles, and I wanted to be blonde hair and tan, and it just didn't happen. And I went out in the sun. I got burned, and you know. But when I got to act drunk and fit in with, it didn't matter, and that's all I ever wanted to feel. And you know, when I got into high school, that feeling of being different just intensified, and that coupled with growing up as it is, it was hideous. And so I decided I would go with my friends and do what they were doing, and I started getting high with them, and that's part of my story. Alcohol was my thing totally in the end, but when I was younger, it was just easier to get the other stuff. The first time I came home drunk, I didn't eat all day. I went to this party, I drank beer, I threw up on myself, I threw up on you, I blacked out, I passed out. My friends brought me home 2 hours early, rang my doorbell, propped me up on the door, and ran. And, you know, that's how my drinking was all the time. When I was 16, I had been suspended from school. I was getting straight Fs. And I wasn't a stupid girl. That's just what was happening in my life. And one of my friends that I partied with all the time, her parents drug her kicking and screaming to this drug abuse program. And I was sick of going out with guys in high school that were so loaded that they couldn't speak. So I asked her if there were any cute guys in that drug abuse program she was going to. And she would do anything to get me sober, so she told me, yeah. And I've been following guys around AA ever since, so. And that's probably what's the matter with me, I don't know. Anyway, I went to this drug abuse program, and I got sober. I stayed sober for about a little over 2.5 years. But I never thought I was an alcoholic. I never could admit to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. And so eventually, you know, I learned how to talk the AA lingo. I knew how to walk, you know, act like I was walking when I was talking, but I really wasn't inside, because I thought, you know, I'm just too young. And I quit going to AA. I started hanging out with my friends, and we would go to the dance clubs, and I ended up drinking again one night, and I felt so guilty because my whole family was in AA by this time, and, you know, we were doing family intervention, and so I went back to AA for another year and a half. I was 19 at the time, and I didn't drink. I did everything in AA, but I mean, I did everything I did as an alcoholic, but not drink. So I was I was just insane. I was going out with married men. I was not going to work. I was hanging out with I was just crazy. And I couldn't figure out why. And I thought, you know what? I'm really not an alcoholic. These people in AA are brainwashed, and I'm not a part of this, and I'm not going to go to AA anymore. I'm just not going to drink, because I know that I can't handle that substance stuff. So that lasted about a month. I'm in the Pacific group now. The first time I heard Clancy speak, I was up in Santa Barbara, and I told my friend, maybe we should go to that group, because they sounded like they were doing things in AA that I needed to be doing that I wasn't. And she told me they had to go into this yard and pick up dog poop, and I didn't want any part of that, so I said, okay, I won't do that. And a month later, I was drinking again, and this is where I really think I crossed the line. I was 20 years old. You know, I was 20 years old at the time, and I really think that that's when alcohol worked. That's when it went down. It stayed down. I didn't throw up. I woke up, I had a hangover, but at least I didn't throw up. And that's where it started for me. I was hanging out in Hollywood. I wanted to meet a rock. My goal in life was to meet a rock star, get married so I would never have to work, and have little kids that were like long hair rocker kids. And that was the only thing. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to work. I want somebody else to take care of everything else, and I could just be and do what I wanted to do. And of course, that never happened. I always worked. I always had a job. I always worked. And when I was drinking, I always worked. When I tried to stay sober without working the program, I could never work. But when I was drinking, I worked, and I had to have money to get alcohol. I never got a driver's license till I was 23 years old, and I think that's by the grace of God, because I think that if I would have been drinking and driving, that I would have just been dead right now. I don't think I'd be standing here. And I got my driver's license when I was 23 after I was sober. But anyway, when I was 20, I started drinking again. My friends they always said, oh, we'll support you, we'll be there, you don't have to drink, we'll always support you. But the minute I said I wanted to drink, they were on. They thought that was the best thing in the world, and we were going to go out and have fun. And I had one friend who was the driver. We would drive through Laurel Canyon, just twisting almost off the canyon half the time, and drinking and staying out and hanging out in these bands with it was hideous. I went out with this guy one time, and he lived in this studio apartment in Hollywood, and it with another guy, and there was these big cockroaches. It was just hideous. It was just, I thought, my parents didn't want me to ever live like this, They brought us up well, and they never wanted us to live like this, and here I was in this mess. And I was 20, and I started drinking, and I started doing drugs again a lot, and I quit doing drugs after about 2 months because I was in this bar and I was drinking and doing drugs in their bathroom, and I almost got arrested, and I thought I would not be a good candidate for jail, and so I quit doing drugs, but I continued to drink, and what happened was I met this guy in this bar, and I got pregnant, and I was kicked out of my house. I was living at my brother's in this two-bedroom house, in this two-bedroom apartment with his girlfriend and the kid and me, and I'm drinking and using, and I got pregnant, and I thought, I can't have this baby, but I didn't believe in abortion, but that's what I did. That's where alcohol took me, and that's where I lost complete control of anything I ever wanted to do, because I felt like I was the biggest scumbag in the whole world, and that I had no purpose to live. I just killed my baby, you know, I deserve to die. I deserve to live in misery. I didn't know what. And I went from not even being able to stand the smell of tequila to drinking it without the lime, without the salt, without the glass. Just give me the bottle because I needed a drink. Because everything I had ever believed in was just completely shattered behind alcohol. And I felt like I would never amount to anything or be worth of anything. And you know, that's just how I lived for about the next 2 years. I was 23 and alcohol quit working for me. I was at a party and I was drinking kamikazes, and I was drinking them right out of the pitcher, and you know, my head was still on. The alcohol quit. I was only 23 and it quit. And shortly after that was when I had my last drink. I had to change my sobriety date over drugs, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but I had my last drink a little over 8 years ago, and but that night I knew that alcohol wasn't going to work for me anymore. So I thought, okay, I can't drink, obviously, it's not working, and I'm not going to go to AA because I think that those people are brainwashed. So what's left for me? I have no car. I'm 23 years old. I'm the only 23-year-old I know that doesn't have a car, that doesn't drive, that doesn't know how to drive. And I just had no self-worth. I thought, well, I'll go to school. I think school will do something for me. You know, at least they can't take that away. At least if I get an education, they can't take that away, and that will always be mine. And so I went to Pierce College, and I signed up for school, and I took their test to, you know, see what classes I needed to take, and then I left, and I was sitting on a bus bench to go home. My house was that way, and the only AA clubhouse I knew of that was nearby was that way. And they were about equal distance from the school, and I thought, oh God, I thought, I cannot do this school thing and do AA too, because during my drinking I tried to take a couple classes, and I'd take one at a time, and by the third semester I just couldn't even show up because I was drinking too much. And so I knew I couldn't do this school thing and drink, and I knew I couldn't not drink and not be in AA, and that was where I got my moment of clarity. I knew that I could not drink and not be in AA at the same time. I just knew that. So I went on the bus that way to the clubhouse, and the first person that greeted me was this girl who I'd been sober with, who we drank together again, and she had been sober again before me, and we got in a big fight over this guy that neither one of us even talked to anymore at that point. But we got in this big fight, and she was the first person to greet me back into AA. She was the first person to sit me down and give me a cup of coffee, and we had the steps were up across the wall, and you know, I could handle the first few because I always believed that there was a God, but when it got to the inventory step, I thought, I'm not telling anybody all of my secrets. I just can't do it. And she said I didn't have to. She said I just had to sit down and drink the coffee and show up because I was just too crazy. And so I did that, and then I got a sponsor who's the longest member of that group at the time, and I started doing the things in AA that we do. I started showing up at meetings. I started getting commitments at meetings. I started, you know, showing up at AA events, and and working the steps. I did all of that. But the problem was I was about 8 months sober, and I met him, and, you know, AA didn't mean as much to me anymore. And we did a dance for a couple years, and we both dated other people. Then we got back together, and it's about 6 years ago, the night before I turned 25, he decided that he was going to break up with me, and I thought that was a bad idea. So I decided that I would take some pills because I needed to go to sleep, because my head was one more time crazy, because one more time I wasn't showing up in AA and reaching my hand out to newcomers and thinking about you instead of thinking about me, because I was thinking about him and how I was going to control him, and that wasn't working. And so I started taking pills, and I did that for about a month. And, you know, all I knew how to do, I was so insane about this guy, but the only thing I knew I could do was to be in AA meetings. And I was still taking these pills. And finally I quit taking the pills, and then a girl from the group that I'm in now came and spoke at our meeting, and she talked about being clean and sober from anything that affected you from the neck up, and all I could think about were these pills. And you know, I talked about it with some people, and they didn't think it was a slip, and so I never talked about it like it was a slip. But shortly thereafter, I started going to the group that I'm in now, and every single meeting they say that we're sober from anything that affects us from the neck up. So every single meeting, all I thought about were these pills, and whether it was a slip or not or whatever. But I finally decided I was going to change my sobriety date. I changed sponsors to somebody that was in the group, and because I am the kind of person who I need to be with somebody who's there and knows what's going on in my life, because if you don't know what's going on in my life, I'm not going to tell you, and if you're not around for me to tell you, then, you know, that's just the way it is. But I got this sponsor, and she was great, and I told her about the pills, and we changed my sobriety date, and it was a freedom for me, because I didn't have to defend it anymore. I didn't have to get in arguments with people about it anymore. I didn't have to feel like my sobriety wasn't mine, and I never knew what a gift that could be. And one more time I started doing the things in Alcoholics Anonymous that I still do today, and that's, you know, I show up at meetings, I get commitments, I work with newcomers, and I work with my sponsor on a regular basis. And you know, I was about I was a little over a year sober, and I met this other guy, and we started going out, and then we didn't see each other, and then we started going out, and we didn't see each other, and then we started going out really seriously, and we stayed in a relationship that was just hideous for about 1.5 years. And when I was 3.5 years sober, that I had a whole ton of events happen in about 2 weeks. My niece was born, I moved to Anaheim, I broke up with this guy, my uncle died, and my sponsor that I had was no longer at the same meetings that I was at, and I really didn't talk to her that much, and I just kind of had closed off at that point. And I was completely insane. I figured that when I moved to Anaheim, because I moved down there for work, that then I would just leave my group and my friends, and then I would make a whole new life down there. And it wasn't that easy for me to do. I've always been able to do that, stay somewhere for a couple years and then split, and not be where anybody could get to know me. And what happened was I kept driving up here to the meetings because I didn't know what else to do. I was completely insane, and I changed sponsors to the sponsor I have now. And you know, I think that Jamie is the best woman that I've ever met in my whole life. And you know, one more time I had started to keep secrets, and I started to keep secrets about this relationship, and I started to keep secrets about other events in my life, and I had gotten so crazy that I thought, I knew I couldn't drink because I'd done that before and it didn't work. And I couldn't kill myself because my uncle just died, and my whole family was already distraught about my uncle just died, and I think he died of this disease. They found tons and tons of pills, and he was definitely an alcoholic, and I think he died of this disease. But you know, this was already presented to me, and all I thought is, I'm going to go insane. That's it. That's all that's left for me, because this AA thing is not working. And I heard Jamie share, and Jamie talked about living lie-free, and she talked about living secret-free, and she talked about how much she loved her life today, and I thought, and I believed her. I believed everything that she said. I think that she walks like she talks, and I thought maybe she can help me, and I thought, this is going to be my last chance. And so I asked her to be my sponsor, and I started to work the steps with her, and I started to get rid of the secrets that I kept in AA. And I told her one night I was completely nuts. What I was doing was, I had this ex-boyfriend that just broke up with me, and I knew his voicemail code, and I was checking his messages. And he didn't know it. I was the only one who knew it, and I thought I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't erasing anything. I was just checking them. But it was a secret that was making me crazy. And so all I knew, I was down in Anaheim, I was by myself, and I just started to write. And I wrote down every little crazy thought that was in my head. And I don't know, I think it was like 3 or 4 pages, front and back, and I just kept writing until I just couldn't write anymore. And I called Jamie, and because I just said that prayer, God, please help. And I think that night it was answered, because I wrote down all that stuff, and I called her, and I think she called me back, and I read it to her. I told her all the stuff. I told her every single little secret I had at that time. I just gave it all up to her. And she talked with me, and we prayed, and I started to feel like one more time I was earning my seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. One more time I was getting clean with my relationship to God, and I didn't even know what that was, because in this midst of me being sober and going to school and stuff, I ended up with this philosophy teacher who was an atheist, who is still my good friend today, but I questioned everything I ever believed, and I didn't know what God was, and I didn't know how to believe in it. But that night, when I got to read that letter to Jamie, I got to believe in something, and I started to get hope again. And I hope that it doesn't take everybody 3.5 years to start getting the kind of hope that I got that day, but that's what it took for me. And I had problems in all my life. I couldn't show up to work on time. I couldn't do this. So we made this deal, if I didn't show up to work on time, that I would have to go to the yard on Saturday. So I was in the yard for a year. And then about a year later, I started to date this other guy he was just a bundle. And I didn't know it. And he had a ex-girlfriend who was really upset with me going out with him. And he also had a wife he forgot to tell us all about. And anyway, but this ex-girlfriend of his and I, we got in, and we were all in the same AA group. It was just terrible. It was terrible. This was last year, I guess, sometime last year, and we hated each other. I mean, if you would have left me and this girl alone in a room together, we probably would have gouged each other's eyes out. And all my friends were telling me, Kelly, you didn't do anything wrong. You're going out with somebody's ex-boyfriend, big deal. But I knew that I was the one that had the resentment, and I had a huge resentment. And I always heard this lady Sharon in our group speak about her and her ex-husband's ex-wife and how they hated each other, and now they were friends. I thought, I'm never going to be friends with this girl. I'm going to tear her up. And after a while, all the madness subsided, but I still had the resentment. And I was sitting in our Wednesday night meeting one night, and I thought, this just deep thought came to me that I needed to make amends to her. And I'd always gotten up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could get to the point where I could tell people and start asking for my defects of character to be removed, but I never really knew how to make the amends. And I thought, okay, I'll make a deal with God. If she's in the bathroom after the meeting, then I'll make amends to her. And I walked into our bathroom after the meeting, and she wasn't there. I went to the bathroom. I came out. Here was this girl walking into the restroom. I thought, okay, I get the picture. And I asked her if she had a minute. And all I said to her was that, I just wanted to let you know that it was never my intention to hurt you, and I just wanted to say I was sorry." And she said, "Thank you." And that was it. It was no big fireworks or no great, "Oh, I love you." But you know what? It's a year later after that amends was made, and when I see this girl, we truly love to see each other, and that resentment is gone. I feel like that I've really earned my place here in Alcoholics Anonymous, that nothing is so powerful to me as those amends steps. And I always think that it's really easy for me to make amends to somebody who loves me and cares about me, because, we always step on each other's toes, and they make amends to me, and, it's that kind. But when somebody you really hate and that really hates your guts and you make amends to each other, it's the most awesome thing I've ever experienced in Alcoholics Anonymous. I just I'm amazed. This girl was speaking, and I told her I would go hear her speak, and she was really shocked that I showed up, but I do that. I really am genuinely glad to see her, and I thought if you would have told me that a year and a half ago, that I would like to see this girl, I would have just looked at you like you just jumped off some other planet, because there was no way. But behind that resentment, before any of those amends were made, I was 4.5 years sober. And I was walking into a liquor store because I was so crazy. And I thought, I just wanted to have the relief. I knew alcohol wasn't going to fix it, but I knew that it was going to let me not feel it. Just even for a little bit, I wasn't going to feel the darkness that I felt behind that resentment. I don't know why I walked in there and walked over to the soda section instead of the beer section, because I really, really needed to drink that day. And except for the grace of God. And I so completely believe in God today, and that I have a path, and that I have a purpose for being here. And today I just got a job offer. I've been at this job for 10 months. I was at my job before this for 5 years, and I switched jobs because I moved up here. And I'm at this job, and I hate it. And I have to remember that I have to do God's will when I'm there. Otherwise, I'm going to shoot somebody. But I've done the footwork to look for other jobs, and my sponsor just said, "Are you willing? Are you willing to do what it takes to, do it?" Because I need to have a job. I need to have something to pay my bills, because no one else is paying them for me. And I never found that rock star to pay him for me. And I've been at the point where I've just wanted to just get up and leave this job. And today I got a job offer, and they want me to start in 2 weeks, and I wanted to give 3 weeks notice so I could take a week off in between so I can regroup and start fresh. And they wanted me to start in 2 weeks, and they said, if you start in 2 weeks, then we'll give you a week of paid vacation in November or December, anytime you want to take. And I think, how does that happen to somebody like me who can't even wake up in the morning? How can that happen to somebody who has no self-worth and no sense of purpose and no sense of God and no sense of anything, just had no sense. And I think that Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me everything. I want to thank Nubia for coming with me tonight. I called her at the very last minute and said, "Can you go with me? I don't want to go by myself." And she's my AA sister. She has more sobriety time. She's 10 years younger than me, and she has more sobriety than I do. And she got sober really young, and she's just like my little sister, I feel very protective over her, and I think that, she always called me her big sis, and I think that the relationship that we have is one of those other gifts from Alcoholics Anonymous, that when I was drinking and I was using, when I was growing up, I was not a good sister to my little sister. I used to beat her up and yell at her, and I was really, really mean and horrible to her. And I'm not like that today. And I get to have a little sis who has never gets to see me like that. And I'm not like that to my real little sister either. And she thinks I'm pretty neat. And I have 2 little nieces now that my younger sister and my nieces, they all moved 3,000 miles away last year, which just makes me crazy. But, you know, the little girls are starting to talk now, and they talk to me on the phone, and they say, "Goodbye, I love you," and they hang up the phone on me. And I think, you know, if I was drinking, I would miss all this. If I was drinking, I would have never been there when they were born. If I was drinking, you know, I would have just never shown up, because when I was drinking, I couldn't even get out of bed. You know, I just couldn't face the world. I didn't know. You know, I just thought, oh, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to stay in bed. I would sleep all afternoon and drink all night. And today my life is full. I don't have much time to sleep anymore. I'm working. I'm at AA functions. I'm converting to Catholicism this year because I think that everybody that's been really influential in my life is Catholic, and I wasn't brought up in any religion, and I think that I want to have some kind of path and guidance in my life. So I think that's the path that I'm supposed to be on, and I'm in church every Sunday now. And I couldn't even step foot into a church when I got sober because I just felt like I was not worth anything, and God certainly didn't want anything to do with me. And I walk in on Sunday morning, and they're singing, and we're praying, and I think, I belong here. I think that I'm God's child. I'm a child of God, and I belong here. And I think that God wants me here. And I think that's amazing, because I never thought that anybody wanted me anywhere. I just thought, you know what, when I turn around, they're going to talk about me anyway, so what's the use? Because I was so damn self-obsessed. But you know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me such a great life. You know, it's, I wouldn't trade this life for the world. You know, my sponsor always says that she has the best life. You know what? I'm starting to think that I have the best life. I'm starting to think that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, and that I'm doing God's will, and that I'm living a life that's full of use to others. And I think, God, you know, I never even wanted a life that was used to others, and now it's what I have, and I love it. So I hope that if you're new here, that I hope that you get a good sponsor, and I hope that you get a sobriety date, and I hope that you get lots of friends in AA and a home group, because those are the things for me that have made my life completely worth living, that have made me take root and grow up and be a woman. And I want to thank you all for listening.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.